AI, they think it's going to be a magic button, magic pill. Hi, my name is Warren Schuitema. I am actually the founder of Matchless Marketing. There's a lot of ways that it's being implemented incorrectly just because of the buzzword of AI. Hey, we need to put AI out there, so let's throw it into everything.
What is one AI tool every MSP should stop using?
TikTok and CapCut, you could say DeepSeek. There's certain tools that are put out by Chinese governments. Those are things that people have to be worried about when they're thinking about those things.
We're really almost stupid drunk on our tools. We love shiny new objects. It's bringing that solution looking for a problem. Ban one type of AI implementation tomorrow. What would that be and why?
Wow, that is a tough one. Right off the bat, banning.
Warren, welcome to the MSP Insider Show. Please tell the audience who you are, what you do, and why the hell that you do it.
Hi, my name is Warren Schuitema. I am actually the founder of Matchless Marketing, which I started only about 2 years ago when I wanted to actually go into my own business and become an entrepreneur and do something that I knew would be able to change lots of people and businesses. And I kind of leaned into the digital marketing because I'd seen over the course of COVID that a lot of businesses could be going into the digital space. Online, you don't have to be doing a brick and mortar, things like that. So I kind of wanted to do something along those lines. And so I started diving into that. And then last January 24, started really diving into the AI side of marketing. Just because running my own agency, I needed to figure out ways that I could speed up the process, do it a little bit faster so that I could become more efficient and be able to serve more people in doing so. So I really started diving into all the AI stuff, taking courses, taking all kinds of stuff to learn the marketing, the content, all of that kind of stuff through ChatGPT and different services. Yeah. And then started taking actual courses to become certified as a consultant. So then I pivoted the marketing agency into a AI consulting agency. And now what I do is I help small, medium businesses and solopreneurs figure out how they can implement AI into their daily businesses through any number of channels. It could be in their marketing, could be in their sales, could be in their lead gen, could be in their HR, could be almost in any kind of part of the business. They can implement AI as long as they're doing it properly, and that's where I try to come in and help them by doing so. So that's just something that I've learned and been loving, and learning how to actually put automations together where you can connect different tools. So things that some people might not have thought that could be connected can all get connected and integrated together to just make things a little bit easier for them in their daily lives, in their business, in all kinds of areas. And that's just kind of where I've been going and trying to help educate businesses as much as I can and help them out in that kind of stuff.
Fantastic. The thing that I'm really excited about for this conversation and for this audience, Warren, is that as an industry, historically, MSPs tend to, I don't want to say resist change, but anytime there's a new solution, right? So take any marketing buzzword, whether it was the cloud or, anything, it really, there's this wait and see window, as I call it, about 18 months where they're aware of it. Their customers are asking them about it. They can sort of hold things off with a stiff arm to an extent and wait and see what happens. How do people package certain things? How do they price it? I also describe it as letting someone else take all the arrows. And then after someone's figured it out, which takes about that long historically, then you kind of already have most of the mold figured out. And now you can grab the solution, become me too, and start doing it that way. And what I've started to see even in these last 6 to 12 months with the industry is it's repeating that same wait and see process, which we'll dive into. But before I'll finish that thought really quick is there's a lot of folks on the MSP side trying to figure out how to connect the dots basically between where you are and what you're doing and like where they're positioned in the market and how they can close the loop, like whether it's run the last mile or maybe a different way of saying it too is you are working backwards or forwards from identifying problems first and then bringing the solution to it. Whereas I think the industry's a little paralyzed right now, running around with a solution in their hands, but they have no idea what problem they're trying to solve. And that's where that lag or that 18-month sort of wait window comes from. And so before you dive into any of that mouthful, I've got to open the show the way that we always do, which is with a question that was left behind by the previous guest. And so the guest that left a question behind for you is Ashley Cooper. And the question that she had was based off of Karl Popper's falsifiability factor or theory. And through that, she was talking about how most beliefs are dogmatic. Well, the theory, I guess I should say. Most beliefs are dogmatic unless they can be disproven. The example she gave was like gravity. If you wanted to try to disprove gravity, you'd have to be able to hold a plate out, let it go, and not have it fall to the floor, right? So what would you say is the biggest dogma in AI implementation that the industry is treating as gospel right now?
Um, that's the I think the biggest thing is that AI is they think it's going to be a magic button, or they
Mm,
expect it to kind of be a magic button. In a lot of industries where they expect if somebody like me to come into their industry and say, I want this to be AIified, and it's just
mm,
the click a button and it's going to work. Um,
yeah.
that I think is one of the biggest things, that they're imagining that it's going to be this kind of magic pill, an easy button to just go do, kind of like the Staples
Hmm.
button used to be in the
Yeah.
commercials. You push a button and
Right.
it's done. Um, I think that's probably the biggest thing that AI is getting pushed. And
Hmm.
even on the agent side, that's where I think it's being pushed that the agents are the next wave of AI. And um, and if you don't start to implement them now, you're going to fall behind necessarily.
Hmm.
But I think that there's a lot of things that are going on with it that if you're not doing it the right steps and actually implementing it the right way,
Yeah.
it's not going to be taken the right way, and then people are going to say, well, AI doesn't work. and
Yeah.
and so then all of a sudden it's like, well, we showed that it doesn't work because of this, and it's because they didn't go into it with the right mindset and the right tools.
Hmm.
And so it blows up in their face, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they get that mindset of, well, it's going to hallucinate, it's going to do all of
Hmm.
these things that I don't want it to do. And now it's that is why they don't implement AI, because
Yeah.
of that fear, and
Sure.
that kind of mentality.
Yeah. And I know that concept to be very true because it's really prevalent in our space through any other lens. It doesn't, you don't have to talk about AI. You can talk about really any solution or any effort over the last, I don't know, I was in it for 18 years and I saw it all over the place, which an example is like, well, marketing doesn't work, or SEO doesn't work, or pay-per-click doesn't work, or this tool doesn't work. And to your point, it was like, it wasn't ever the tool. It wasn't ever necessarily the outcome or the solution so much as how it was either deployed, implemented, enabled, prepared, like set up for success. And I agree with you that AI is no different. And in so many ways, just like computers, which is kind of the ironic part, right? For IT folks, it's like it's really only going to do what the zeros and ones told it to do to begin with. But if you have a really great foundational understanding about what it's supposed to do or how it does what it does, then you can engage with it appropriately to work with it like a coworker to work towards the objective that you're collectively working on together. That tends to be, I think, one of the missteps or the trip ups too, especially with how consumer accessible AI has become. It's conditioned us to engage with it in a certain way, where when you then apply it to a totally different use case and you get some result that you don't like or don't understand, you can get frustrated. So I want to get back to a question then, because you had mentioned kind of if they don't think about it or don't do it the right way or don't really approach it intentionally, that's kind of the result that they're headed towards. Can you oversimplify how you might approach that with like a 3-step strategy?
Um, the three steps that I typically take, with clients or with trying to look at something in the process to figure out if AI is needed, is
Hmm.
really, I take the actual process of what they're doing and stepify it, put it
Hmm.
into steps, and then say, okay, here's all of the steps. Where are the inputs? What tools are being used? And then I look at it and say, where could AI be put into it? Does it need to be put into it here, or does it just need to be put into a different tool or process that can simplify it?
Yeah.
And then I go and test the theory or the new process.
Hmm.
Um, so that's as simple as I usually try to make it, is kind of doing the whole process of what they're trying to get their workflow to do or get their process to improve upon, and then you figure out all those steps and you chunk it out. Use your different tools that could be integrated for
Yeah.
that kind of process, and
Hmm.
then put in the steps and then just test it out and go from there. It is usually how I try to do it.
Yeah. The thing that I love about that, and I try to use this as one of the war drums that I beat on too, is that so many of the things that we do, whether it's in AI, really anything on the business side, but we're so predisposed to like jump straight to the doing work that we avoid or don't slow down long enough to really create space for that deep thinking work to happen first, right? And what I'm hearing you describe is one of my old scenarios that was more like uh, sitting in the conference room and you've got all the sticky notes and you're just like running it up to the board, right? And you're literally like physically walking through the process
Yeah, I
before you
generally,
can.
I was gonna say, when I'm in a meeting with clients, a lot of times I'll pull up, a drawing board or whatever, and just start to kind of block it out and say, here's step one, and it goes to this. Here's step two, and it goes to this, and
Yeah.
here's step three, and you just process it out, and then you say, okay, who's doing what part of the step? Where is it being, done? Is it a person? Is it a
Hmm.
computer program? Is it, what is it? And then you just can plug it all that way. And once you lay it out that way, it just becomes a lot easier to simplify and
Yeah.
and actually look at it and then say, okay, what is a repetitive task? Is there some form in there that is always the same? Is there something that does have to have that human touch to it that makes it different? Or is
Right.
it a computer program? Is it anything along those lines? Is it an Excel spreadsheet? Is it a database? Is it those kinds of things can all vary, and that's where the workflows, if you can visualize it, definitely helps.
Hmm. Yeah. That's it's such a fascinating thing, especially in our space, right? Because um, we're such a craft style business, but I don't think we acknowledge it either that way. And what I mean by that is we're not really great at slowing down oftentimes long enough to document any part of it. It just ends up being well, I hired the new person, come walk in my shoes, I'll tell you how to do it. And it's all sort of that, training and building via osmosis. And that's just such a fascinating characteristic where, again, if you can create that space or even have it facilitated by someone like yourself because you don't know how, and like it's just literally an analog manual thinking exercise before you ever get to touching a keyboard. But we're so predisposed to like jump into the keyboard because we're very capable people, that we always want to figure it out for ourselves. But I think that's also then why we find ourselves in the situation that you described before, where it's like, well, I tried it and it didn't work. And then you just write it off entirely. But this isn't one of those things that can or should be written off.
I was gonna say that, or the I tried it and it didn't work, or that person comes in and say, well, I tried it, it didn't work this way, so now I'm gonna do it this way,
Mm,
and then they completely change the process because
yeah.
they don't have the understanding necessarily that this was the process, and that's
Hmm.
where if you document it and have an SOP of this is the step by step. And one of the great things nowadays is with AI and tools is there's things that you can do to record almost everything you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
If it's with a screen, you can pull it up and do Loom or do a OBS and
Yeah.
download it, record it, take that file and bring it to an LLM like OpenAI or
Mm-hmm.
Gemini, say, analyze this video and provide me a process. And then you can
Right.
actually have it write an SOP for you. And then you could take that video file and take that same thing, have your SOP with a video file, and then every new employee that comes in could really just take that, watch the video of, hey, here's the process, and it's done for them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden can change your training because you can take that and it's all digital, and then you can customize the training per person that comes in.
Mm-hmm.
If you put it in the right way, you could make it so somebody that's a more visual learner, they watch the video. Somebody that's more step by step, they get the SOP and then they just go and plug it in and start doing what the document says. And that's another great thing I think about AI is with onboarding, with different processes, you can use it to each business obviously is going to have its own processes, but you can
Mm-hmm.
set it up and get it all within your own ecosystem where you've got your training documents where once you've done it, you only have to refresh it once a year, maybe with new updates and things like that. You don't have to come in and each new employee that comes in, okay, now I've got to spend X amount of hours
Mm-hmm.
personally training them. You can just say, hey, here's our documentation, here's the video files, here's a chat bot that is programmed and trained on our stuff, and
Yeah.
you can ask it those questions, and then you can actually use it for those methods. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be used, and um, just like you said, though, if you're doing it the old school method, and we think of the way that we used to do it,
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to do it that way. But if you can document it with the new tools that are out there,
Mm-hmm.
it can make it so much easier for you
Yeah.
in the future and for your employees coming in.
Where would you say, based off how you're seeing things out in the wild, where are 90% of businesses that are trying to implement AI getting things completely wrong?
Um, they, I think, are coming into it and they're trying to necessarily grab a tool that is out there that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily fit what they're already doing. I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot of ways that if they've already got something that is working for them, they
Mm-hmm.
can integrate it with something else, like an N8N for workflows
Sure.
or a Zapier or a Make. Those are different kinds of automation types of things that you can integrate together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you don't have to give up what you're already working on, and you don't have to migrate everything to a new system. You don't have to completely do the wheel or anything like that. You can keep working the way that you're doing it, but you can integrate something new in that way. Um, I think there's so many tools that are out there right now
Yeah.
that a lot of times they're throwing, like, oh, this is the next shiny thing, so let's go with that one, or oh, this one promises this, let's go with that one, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not vetting it necessarily. Lots of these tools are still in beta, and might not even get all the way to the point where it's needed um, for the full enterprise needs and everything like that. And then all of a sudden the tool's gone, and they've got to work with something else. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of ways that it's being implemented incorrectly just because of the buzzword of AI and hey, we need to put AI out there, so let's throw it into the everything.
Yeah.
That's the big I think one of the biggest things.
Right. If you could ban, as maybe a follow-up question to that too, if you could ban one type of AI implementation tomorrow, what would that be and why?
Um, if I could ban one kind of AI implementation, I would probably like right off the bat, I would say banning. Wow, that is a tough one. I would say probably like throwing an AI LLM or throwing an AI into an automation that doesn't need
Mm-hmm.
it.
Okay.
There are a lot of times that I've seen it where they're like, oh, we need to have our emails. fully automated, or we need to have this process fully automated. So they think, oh, we need to bring in a
Mm-hmm.
chat bot and do all of this stuff, when a lot of times a lot of the tools that are already available for a CRM or different things like that, they have
Yeah.
workflows set up where you just have to take the time with an employee to go and set them up, where it is triggered off of this, and it
Yeah.
goes through this step by step process, puts an email out there to them, puts them into the CRM, alerts your staff, does all that kind of stuff. Those don't have to have an AI involved in it necessarily. And I
Mm.
think that's where a lot of people think, oh, I want my emails to all have it, and I want to do this, and then I want it to be hands free.
Yeah.
That's that's another one too. Is try I would ban trying to set up a fully autonomous uh, AI at this point as well. Um, I think that's one where every interaction I try to do, or every workflow I try to do, I try to always put human in the loop
Mm-hmm.
checkpoints and fail safes in there, where
Yeah.
it has to be verified by somebody before it gets posted, before something, because
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of rogue AIs that go out there, and it can do stuff that you think it's set, and then they change something on their end with the way that the
Mm.
uh, temperature is set or the parameters are set, and all of a sudden it goes and hallucinates and makes the wrong claims, and then your reputation is tarnished a little bit because you're posting things that aren't real, and
Yeah.
people say, well, that's not real, and that's fake and everything, and then all of a sudden it turns against you because you're blindly trusting that the AI is
Mm.
going to do everything that it should
Yeah.
100% of the time.
Yeah. One of the things that I I associate it to Jonathan Schofield now because you hear him say it all the time, but where like delegation's not the same thing as abdication, essentially, right? So it's kind of the same thing when you look at whether that's to a person, right? You wouldn't delegate a task to a net new employee on day one without clear process, clear expectations, clear everything else. I mean, you shouldn't, but we do. Similarly to AI, you wouldn't or shouldn't just outsource all of the sovereignty from A to Z without a little bit of handholding or a little bit of guardrails, because it's not the same, right?
Correct.
Abdication is not delegation, is kind of what I'm hearing you say. Out of the hundreds and hundreds of workflows that you've built probably at this point in N8N, even the real world scenarios that you've written about, what would you say is not even what would you say? What automation do you see businesses sort of bragging about or like stepping into that, limelight piece? But the automation that they're bragging about is actually making them slower.
um there's a lot out there right now that is being done for certain purpose. I mean, there's you see a lot of automations that people are throwing workflows out for, um, the viral content, the
Yeah.
UGC creators, and things like that. Um, and they're saying, oh, you can get all these leads through TikTok and get all these leads through these different sources just by throwing up this automation, and all you have to do, a lot of those, the where they throw out the viral, do
Mm-hmm.
this, I think that those ones are more wasting time.
Yeah.
Because by the time you've already seen those kinds of workflows and those kinds of things,
Mm.
the the stuff that they're posting out there, if you're going to go try to take it and use it, it's already being done. It's already,
Yeah.
in everybody's. So all of a sudden you're going to be the copycat, or you're going to be so there's a lot of those kinds of things where if you're not building the workflows for your own business needs, things
Mm-hmm.
that are taking your time and taking your efforts, then you're just wasting time.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of mine, when I first started doing it, it was like, okay, I'm creating content multiple times a week, and it's taking me hours to do it and keep up on it. So now I need to do something. So I just created a workflow that I can now just go and create it a lot faster
Mm-hmm.
by giving it a topic and approving the stuff. And then it's in a spreadsheet and it's ready for me to go. And then the next step was, oh, I'm creating blogs multiple times a week. So how can I get it so the blog process is faster for me? Now I've got it where I can go and give an idea, It
Mm-hmm.
writes blogs in my tone and style with research. I approve it. I add a couple things where I add in like something that happened to me that week. So the blog
Mm-hmm.
sounds a little bit more personable, and
Yeah.
then I can post it. And it went and took my process down from hours of research, writing, doing all this stuff to now I can get two blogs, three blogs posted within an hour and
Mm.
it's ready to go, and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And then, then you look at the next step and you say, okay, emails, those are taking up all my time. How can I,
Right.
so you just automate things that make sense and are pain points for you
Mm-hmm.
instead of just saying, oh, well, this is a fun automation. Let me go do it. And it
Yeah.
just wastes time with things that aren't moving the needle.
Yeah. There's kind of the way that I've begun speaking about that is like the difference between dopamine and discipline. And even inside just your everyday LLM, whichever one it happens to be, that's where I speak to it or coach to it the most, because like it's optimized to continue to give you what you want, or even just the cue or the process, the question at the end, right? It's like to go create this next thing and this next thing and this next thing. So you can really easily get baited into the guise of productivity, which is really just like an extra dopamine dump, when it really requires the discipline, which is what you're saying, where look at what you do right now, like what you're actually doing. Do a time audit, start there, figure out where you're spending the most time, and then make conscious decisions about which pieces to streamline, automate, reduce, but never take yourself out of the full picture on.
Correct.
Yeah. How do you spot when a company is doing some of that automation theater that you described versus having real efficiency gains?
It really comes into when I'm looking at their automations and stuff, I kind of look at what they were doing before they started doing the automations, and
Mm-hmm.
is it really giving their employees time back at that point, or is it creating more work for them?
Mm.
To do to maintain that workflow, different things along those lines. It's is if what they were doing beforehand is not being
Yeah.
optimized at that point, then they're not doing the right kind of automation
Mm.
thought process. So
That's fascinating.
there's a lot of times where nowadays I've seen it where they're starting to say, oh, we're starting to automate this, so now we're going to bring this in,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're taking their employee that was doing this and adding this to their plate when that's not necessarily what they should have been doing
Yeah.
because it's already in a different area.
Yeah. What's fascinating about so many of the ways that you've described going about doing this and doing this well or doing it for other people is just how quickly you strip everything straight back to the human first, right? Well, I go to the people, I go to the process. You're going almost back to the analog world, and then really truly uncovering the truth, not the seeing things the way you expected them to be rather than the way they actually are, and then peeling back those layers, and maybe back to the point of really that deep thought, and building it out in a tangible three-dimensional sticky note on a wall, human to human, people process execution sort of way, and then figuring out, it sounds like, using your own discernment to determine which element of it can and should be streamlined or automated or augmented, and then which parts do you keep your hands on the controls for.
Yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. That's a really another commonality that I don't think is observed quite as much in the MSP space, because we're really like almost stupid drunk on our tools. We love them. We love shiny new objects. We're always finding them and shoving them down people's throats, because it's bringing that solution looking for a problem. We talked a little bit about that, but we can dive in a little bit further there. But before we do, what's the most expensive automation mistake that you've witnessed a business make?
Um, there's times where I've seen them go and they've put things into process or taken it off of the test, and
Yeah.
it hasn't been fully tested or vetted, and all of a sudden it runs them up a bill that that was
Mm-hmm.
unexpected.
Mm.
There's been times where I've seen that where it's they don't have the guardrails put in for responses necessarily, and then the LLM is on a loop or whatever, and they set it to go.
Mm-hmm.
So the next morning, all of a sudden, it's cost them a couple $100 because of the loop or the error that was in there.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes where they've set up those workflows, and just by not setting and testing the right features and the right settings, it has caused them to spend money that was not expected, just
Mm-hmm.
because it was set and they had it almost set as a, oh, this is ready to go and it's automated. Let's let it go. And so the next morning they came in, or the weekend after they came in, and it was like, oh, our bill was what?
Yeah.
Like, how did our API cost go up to this? And it's like, well, there was an error and it caused it
Yeah.
just to keep
It's
looping.
just a loop. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've
Hmm.
seen those, and that's really one of those things where it's like, make sure you're testing everything before you put it into production. Make
Mm-hmm.
sure you've got some sort of, stop on error trigger in there that makes it so that it doesn't keep doing that, or that you've got it set the right way, that it does, if it continues to error, that it goes the right way and after so many attempts.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things.
Hmm. What what is one AI tool that every MSP should stop using immediately?
Hmm. That's I really don't know, just because there's so many different AI tools out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's one tool that I've been, obviously, like TikTok and CapCut are tools that are
Mm-hmm.
out there. Um, and so, you could say DeepSeek. There's certain tools that are, put out by Chinese governments, different things like that. And
Yeah.
those are things that people have to be worried about or concerned about when they're thinking about those things, because if it's created in another country,
Mm-hmm.
their rules and regulations that they've got set up for what those kinds of things they have to report and what they have to
Yeah.
go to the government, those are things that somebody should have to worry about, and on our end as well,
Mm-hmm.
because all the training data, all of those kinds of things could be used where you don't want them to be, and different things like that. So I would err on the caution of things that are not built in your country that you are doing business in, because they may have different rules and regulations that they're following on their end.
Hmm. That's
So
a
it's
good
it's
point.
more of an open-ended, where I would just say, kind
Yeah.
of kind of look at where your stuff is being produced and coming from,
Yeah.
and those kinds of things. Because I know, the TikTok sale, that's a thing that they're talking about, trying to get TikTok bought into the,
Mm-hmm.
US and things like that. CapCut, they just sent out something recently that said anything that was uploaded to their servers could be used for their own marketing tools and different things like that. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I've got hundreds of files that are out there that they could use for their marketing that I'm
Yeah.
not going to get paid for, or they're going to use for this. Those are kinds of things that they might want to think about.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. It's like a an overly obvious reminder to actually read the details of the EULAs that we usually click through for those reasons that you said, right? Even with that TikTok example, or excuse me, the CapCut example, where everything that's there with the flip of a switch and another click accept, all that content is now theirs for the using, so to speak,
Yep.
which opens up a whole different conversation, really. But um, I was doing a little bit of review of on the research side for MSPs more on the macro level. And there was a recent G2 analysis that had showed, which is kind of how we opened the show too, but showed that MSPs are struggling with not only just AI automation costs, which you touched on, but also the implementation barriers. And given your position where you're working with small and large businesses already and successfully deploying automation solutions, what the oxymoron question is, since MSPs, like, why are they the worst or struggling so hard with implementing AI despite selling technology services for however long they've been around?
Um, that's one that I've actually been, running into a little bit. It's really kind of anything that deals with larger corporations, anything along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times there are security things, and because the way that LLMs operate, a lot of times there are concerns with the security, with that kind of stuff, where if you know if it's put in there incorrectly and
Mm-hmm.
not set up properly, then a hacker can come in a lot easier with
Yeah.
the AI side of things and ask it a question and then get access to everything that's in the company. I think that's the biggest reason that a lot of large corporations, a lot of MSPs, anything along those lines are slower to adopt it is because of the those fears. If you the agent side of things where people are setting up these autonomous agents that can do things for them, can go browse the web, can go make
Mm.
a reservation, has access to credit card information, all these different things, that's a security concern because then if somebody hacks into the backside, they've got all of that stuff and it's another data breach. So it's
Mm-hmm.
another one of those. The thing that I think is helping though is that a lot of these are starting to become open source, where
Mm.
a business, if they know the right way to do it, they can download the entire source code of that LLM or that tool and
Mm-hmm.
use it on their end and behind their own secure network and their secure database and everything like that. And then it's
Yeah.
not out there as a cloud based service and it's not out there
Mm-hmm.
as something that people have to have full access to on the internet. It can be contained with their business in that kind of silo.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, as they're starting to see that they can start to pull that information and do that, they
Mm-hmm.
can bring it into their already current tech stack and their current tools and use it on that end. I know, Copilot is becoming a really big one, and they're rolling out a lot more features and tools that can be used for the Microsoft
Mm-hmm.
ecosystem. Google just released a lot of things with their Gemini side of things and their, I think, Google CLI, where you can go in, create tools and different things like
Mm-hmm.
that, and integrate things that are already working together. You've got your AWS side of things. So you've got a lot of things that can be used.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where like N8N comes in. You can self host on that tool.
Mm-hmm.
So you can set it up yourself, put it into your own, servers and everything like that. And then you don't have to worry about their costs there,
Yeah.
and it's got integrations with, if you scroll down the list of things, and it's integrated with Microsoft, it's integrated with AWS, it's integrated with Google, it's
Mm.
integrated with a huge list of tools, your HubSpot, your ClickUp, your
Mm-hmm.
ClickFunnels, all these different things. You can just, all those things that you could use, you can bring right into these workflows, and you can say, oh, I want to pull in the data from this tool, pull it
Yeah.
in from this tool, put them together, and now they're all in one spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are things that I think they can start to use and
Mm-hmm.
integrate, where if they look now and start doing it, they don't have to be 18 months behind,
Yeah.
the other industries or anything like that. They can be right there on the forefront and using those tools to actually get everything working together instead
Mm.
of talking in different languages and different, buckets and different things like that.
Yeah. What one AI capability should an MSP be building internally instead of buying right now?
Um, I think if they can look at doing workflows through like N8N,
Mm-hmm.
it is a tool where they don't really have to spend a whole lot to integrate it.
Mm-hmm.
And with the tech stacks that they've already got, it
Yeah.
makes it very easy to pull in, all kinds of things that they can do. And that's where you can pull in what you've already got available, put it in with an AI agent if you want an N8N, have it
Mm-hmm.
making decisions that you can set up with parameters and tools that it's capable of using, and then it can start making decisions for them. It can speed up the process for them in those workflows and stuff like that. But it can get it where they don't have to be working from this, pulling into here and doing this. It can do it all for them and get it into one easy to digest area for them to
Yeah.
use.
If an MSP had $10,000 to spend on an AI solution, what should they absolutely not buy right now?
I would wait I'd still wait on anything with, at least as far as I've seen with the actual like phone conversational AI.
Mm-hmm.
I would say wait another 6 months to a year. And I think that there will be some tools out there that can do, voice conversations a lot better. I think there's still a little bit where people would call and at this point they would know that it's an AI, and
Yeah.
they can trip it up and things like that, because it still doesn't have enough training and things like that. I think in the next couple of months though, there are a few tools that are coming out that will be very good at it, and capable of doing that stuff. I would even err on some of the um, video creation ones just
Mm.
because the cost right now are still kind of high for if you're going to be creating videos and stuff and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have it dialed in the right way. Um,
Mm.
it would be more of, I'm going to try to go to VO3 and start creating videos and for commercials and stuff. But if you don't know the right way to set it up and do the prompting and do that, you're just going to be wasting credits and money because you're going
Yeah.
to be creating something that isn't what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of that kind of stuff where if you want to go just burn some money and stuff, you can test it out and do that. But I think it's a little bit away from something where you could reliably have something set up.
Yeah. There's maybe another not word of wisdom or cautionary tale, but another theme that popped back up in that, which is really spending the time to deeply understand the inputs so that you can get the outputs that you're expecting rather than just jumping straight into a chat box and thinking that you're describing the thing that you want, but with such ambiguity and in almost direct opposition to the way that the prompt engineering needs to be designed for that particular tool, that the reason you get the output that you're not happy with isn't because of the incapability of the tool, but the lack of preparation and articulation in what it is that you wanted or how you needed it to come out. Would
Yep.
you agree with that? Yeah. What is one AI use case that sounds really impressive but doesn't really deliver any ROI?
Um, that would kind of depend, I would think, on the business necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Depending on where they're at in their actual like business growth stage. If
Yeah.
they're still starting out, there's all kinds of ways that AI can be implemented to help on return on investment. Um, but if they're already established and
Yeah.
things like that, there's ways that it could be implemented and not seen as an ROI. Sometimes, a lot of the times, there's certain chatbots. There's extra features that they go
Mm.
and try to implement, um, where I think most users would rather go to a site at this point in time, would rather go to a site, and when they have the chatbot feature in the bottom corner, they would rather have a couple options to select from
Mm-hmm.
than having the full conversation and then having to ask questions. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think there's some oversimplification that can be done,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of times they'll say, oh, we need to have AI into it. So let's throw this chatbot out there that doesn't really need to be an AI. It can be a process driven one. And that, I think, something where there's not really a huge return on investment necessarily, because you could have it set up with a much simpler workflow that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
cost you as much as something that you have to throw in API costs and different things like that, which would just be something where as more people use it, you're going to see more costs. And so if
Yeah.
it's something where you set up a simple chat widget that they come to and they have options and it doesn't jump into asking questions and doing all this other stuff,
Mm-hmm.
your costs are going to be down considerably because they just go click, 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 and it doesn't have to think and go back to an
Mm.
LLM and then create a response and then go back.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you might think, oh, it's just a couple pennies. This kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, every day you're
It
spending
scales
a
out.
hundred
Yeah.
dollars on these API costs because you've got a couple thousand people asking these questions
Mm-hmm.
when it really could be simplified into a
Mm.
form.
Got
Those
it.
those kinds of things I've seen a lot of times where it's, oh, we need to have it answering these questions. It's like, well, no, if you've got it where they put in their name, their address, their date of purchase, and
Mm-hmm.
a picture,
Right.
that doesn't need to have an LLM tied to it. It's a form, and then it goes to your
Mm-hmm.
database that says, oh, yep, the name checks out, the date of purchase checks out, and yep, they're a customer. Now I can
Mm.
go back to them. That doesn't need an LLM, and you're saving money.
Got it.
But I think,
Yeah.
yeah, that's just where right now everybody's like, oh, I need to throw an AI at it to make this decision. It's like, it's just a decision tree. It doesn't
Yeah.
need to be an AI
Right.
thing. So,
Yeah. That was one of the things I learned early on in the process too, especially moving into a SaaS solution that's AI first, essentially. But there were so many decisions along the way of not only what could we build, but what were we building, where it passed through this filter of just because it's possible to do that with AI doesn't mean that's the right solution or the right way to solve for that. There's still a lot of traditional software dev functions, features, possibilities that need to go into certain areas. Whereas then, maybe to part of your earlier comment too, like uh, certain things are still great candidates for just plain old RPA, but and RPA getting rewrapped as AI is a whole different conversation. But there's different ways to splice the different tasks, and a lot of that kind of comes back to what you've put the emphasis on as well, which is the really conscious and intentional deep thinking around what's the task, what's the objective, right? And who's doing it, or what's doing it, or what app is doing it, or what decisions are we making at each little post-it note version of where we're trying to go, and then designing the solutions around that. A couple of really quick hitter questions then. What would be the biggest AI buzzword that needs to die?
oh, the biggest AI buzzword that needs to die. I, I honestly, I'm not huge on the agent
Hmm.
term. I get it, but at the same time, I like to think of them at this point in time more as assistants,
Mm-hmm.
um, because a lot of times you still have to have some sort of human in the loop process to it.
Yeah.
So I think it's more of an assistant to what you're doing. You still have to guide it in what initially you want its interactions to do and things like that. So there's all of that kind of nuance to it that it's not fully autonomous yet in doing
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that if people think about it more as an assistant to them than as an agent
Mm-hmm.
and doing that kind of stuff, I think it'll help in a lot of, you know, people's adoption of it. Actually,
Yeah.
they'll think it's a tool that is assisting me rather than something that is going to take away from me as an agent would.
Got it. For the MSP owners that are watching, what is the first thing they should automate, and what is the last thing that they should automate?
First thing would be, I would think anything with onboarding, any in that process for emails, text, anything like that for a new customer,
Hmm.
because that's really one of the easiest ways to start. Because in order for if you've got a way to get your onboarding all automated, as soon as somebody comes in and fills out a form, it
Mm-hmm.
goes through the process and then you don't have to worry about it until you're being notified of it. You don't have to go worry about a follow-up email. You don't have to worry about adding something to your calendar, things like
Mm.
that. It's being done for you, and it's normally a process that takes a lot of time
Yeah.
and can lose a lot of customers, because if it's
Mm.
not being followed up on, then
Yeah.
the clients feel like they're not being taken care of, and different things like that.
Yeah.
And that's
And
where I
there's,
would say a lot of CRMs have processes like that, but a lot of
mm-hmm.
people haven't taken the time to go into the settings and do that kind of stuff, get it process driven and set up that way. And then they're kind of playing catch up all the time, because
Yeah.
they're constantly worried about the people that are coming in, and then making sure that they're being taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Yeah.
then the last thing that they should try to would be, I would think, I would say like the human resources or the tech,
Mm.
actually like the full
Yeah.
tech, just
Mm-hmm.
because of security kinds of things. If you were to try to AIify it and put it into an automated type thing, if you're not set up properly and you don't have everything already kind of buttoned up,
Mm-hmm.
then you're susceptible to a lot more uh, security concerns, things like that, where somebody could come in and get all of your stuff. And that's where HR, you have all of your employees'
Yeah.
information and all that kind of stuff that you would want to
Mm-hmm.
keep kind of
Right.
secure and confidential. So I would say
Yeah.
those kinds of areas like HR and tech would be the last things that they would really want to put AI into.
Yeah. Warren, where can people find more about you, and where can they find more about the AI automation content that you put out?
They can find more about me on LinkedIn, Facebook, social media under Warren Schuitema. Or I've got a website as well, www.warrenschuitema.com, which is geared more towards families and parents and how they can implement AI into their lives and
Mm-hmm.
things. But it does talk about different tools that they can use. And then I also do business side of AI automations on matchless-marketing.com. So
Okay.
I got information about my business offerings, and I've got blog articles and things like that out there as well.
Awesome. Fantastic. Now, before you go, the last question is, if you could leave one question behind for the next guest that they must answer, what would that question be?
Oh, in the my question is kind of goes along with your 18-month thing. Is in the next 18 months, so by the end of 2026,
Mm-hmm.
where do you expect AI to have taken the industry? And what kind of ways it will have been implemented into almost every facet, or
Mm-hmm.
where is it still lacking? Do you expect it to be lacking at the end of 2026 behind other industries? So, if everybody else has implemented all of this automation stuff, where would MSPs be falling behind in 18 months?
Awesome. Fantastic question. Warren, thank you again for coming on this episode of the MSP Insider. And thank you to the audience for tuning in.